All right, good morning, church family. Let me invite you all to find your seats. And as you find your seats, if you would open your Bibles to the book of Numbers. This morning we're going to be in Numbers 24, 11 to 25. We've been going through the book of Numbers for several months, and we've been going through the prophecies of Balaam, the false prophet Balaam. And so we're on his final prophecy this morning, his fourth and final prophecy. Numbers 24, 11 to 25. The title of the sermon this morning is this: God holds the future. So let's read the text, open us in a word of prayer, and then we'll jump into our sermon this morning. Numbers 24, beginning in verse 11. Therefore now flee to your own place. I said, I will certainly honor you, but the Lord has held you back from honor. And Balaam said to Balak, did I not tell your messengers whom you sent to me, if Balak should give me his house full of silver and gold, I would not be able to go beyond the word of the Lord to do either good or bad of my own will. What the Lord speaks, that will I speak. And now behold, I am going to my people. Come, I will let you know what this people will do to your people in the latter days. And he took up his discourse and said, the oracle of Balaam the son of Beor, the oracle of the man whose eye is opened, the oracle of him who hears the words of God and knows the knowledge of the Most High, who sees the vision of the Almighty falling down with his eyes uncovered. I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. A star shall come out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel. It shall crush the forehead of Moab and break down all the sons of Sheth. Edom shall be dispossessed. Seir also, his enemies, shall be dispossessed. Israel is doing valiantly. And one from Jacob shall exercise dominion and destroy the survivors of cities. Then he looked on Amalek and took up his discourse and said, Amalek was the first among the nations, but its end is utter destruction. And he looked on the Kenite and took up his discourse and said, enduring is your dwelling place, and your nest is set in the rock. Nevertheless, Cain shall be burned when Asher takes you away captive. And he took up his discourse and said, alas, who shall live when God does this? But ships shall come from Kittim, and shall afflict Asher and Eber, and he too shall come to utter destruction. Then Balaam rose and went back to his place, and Balak also went his way. If you will, pray with me. God, this morning as we close out the story of Balaam, at least for now, God, help us to reflect on all that we've learned over the past 4 weeks, looking at this story of Balaam and how from start to finish it has been a story of your providence. That where man planned, where man connived and tried to control the future, you have shown us, Lord, that you hold the future. You are the sovereign God who controls all things, and all things are under your hand, including the future. So this morning, God, would you help us to see that, and especially as we look at Balaam's prophecy and how he prophesies what will happen to Moab, what will happen to Israel, and how it is certain because you have decreed it, God. I pray this all in the name of Jesus. Amen. What would you pay to know the future? If there was somebody who could objectively know the future, and they came to you and they said, I can tell you one thing about your future. You can pick it. Whatever you want. However near or far into the future, I can tell you one thing about the future. What would you pay? How much would that kind of information be worth? What would it be worth to you? Or better yet, what if you could control the future? What if this person said, for an extra fee, not only can you know the future, but you could control something. You can dictate what happens in the future. You can pick one thing and you can control, you can make this happen in the future. How much would that be worth to you? For Balak, it was worth a lot. He was willing to pony up a small fortune to control his future. And yet, when Balaam shows him in this fourth and final oracle this morning, he shows him this: God dictates the future. God holds the future. That's what the sermon is about this morning. That God holds the future. Your future, my future, all of our futures, God holds it in the palm of his hand. I want to give a context. We're jumping right into the middle of a story this morning. Let me give just a brief context, and then we'll jump into our text and our sermon. Balak is the king of Moab, and he has hired Balaam, a pagan diviner, to come and curse Israel. Balaam has already given 3 prophecies that we've looked at over the past several weeks. But with all 3 prophecies, rather than curse Israel, Balaam has instead blessed them. Now, Balaam warned Balak from the get-go that all the words that God puts in his mouth, that he must say. But Balak ignores this warning. And as a result, what man meant for cursing, God used for blessing. And this morning, we're going to get to Balaam's 4th and final prophecy, starting in verse 11. That's where we're going to pick up. If you will, look at it with me in your text. Therefore, now flee to your own place. I said, I will certainly honor you, but the Lord has held you back from honor. So after 3 failures, Balak is now done with Balaam. 3 strikes and you're out. He says, I hired you to curse my enemies, but you have done nothing but bless them. So now we're done. I'm done with you. Therefore now flee to your own place. Now this is Balak's way of saying, go home and go at once. Flee. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Go home. As for our contract, I wrote in there that I would honor you. I said I will certainly honor you, meaning I had every intention of rewarding you handsomely. But the Lord has held you back from honor. In other words, I know you desire to get rich, but the Lord has kept you from getting rich. Now, what's interesting is that's true. That's true. The Lord did keep him from getting honored. Church family, what is God keeping you from? What is God keeping you from? God kept Balaam from cursing Israel. What is God keeping you from? In the high priestly prayer, Jesus prays that God would keep us from the evil one. What evil is God keeping you from? Remember the story of David and Abigail and Nabal? Remember, David asked Nabal for some refreshments for his soldiers, and Nabal said, I don't know who David is. I'm not giving him any refreshments. Nabal rebuffs him. And what does David do? David tells all of his men, strap on a sword. We ride for Nabal's tonight. David is planning to get there and to not only kill Nabal, but to kill all of his family, all the men in his family. But Abigail wisely intervenes. She makes amends for her husband's folly. And when she gets to David, this is what she says to David. Because the Lord has restrained you from blood guilt and has kept you from saving with your own hand. You see, David sought vengeance, and had he enacted this vengeance, he would have been guilty. He would have been guilty of blood guilt, but God kept him. God restrained him from doing it. What is God keeping you from? You see, it's so easy for us to focus on all the things that God is not giving us. Right? God, why are you not giving me this promotion? I deserve it. I've earned it. I've worked hard for this. Why are you not giving me this promotion? Or this job? Or healing? Ever wonder why God wouldn't heal you? Or a boyfriend? Or a girlfriend? Or a spouse? Or friends? Or a child? Or another child? Why won't you give me this? It's so easy for us to focus on all the things that God is not giving us. But have we ever stopped to consider that maybe it's not that God is refusing to give us something good, but that He is keeping us from something worse? Have you ever stopped to consider that? Every day of our life, God is keeping us from evil. We may never even know it. We may never even discern what it is. But He is doing it. He is keeping us from evil. Look at verse 12 to 13. And Balaam said to Balak, did I not tell your messengers whom you sent to me? If Balak should give me his house full of silver and gold, I would not be able to go beyond the word of the Lord to do either good or bad of my own will. What the Lord speaks, that will I speak. You know that phrase, I told you so? Right? Nobody likes to hear that, but that's what Balaam gives to Balak. He's like, why are you surprised, Balak? Why are you so angry with me? I told you so. Even before this whole charade started, when your servants first came to me, all the way back long ago they came to me, I told them, I said, look, if your king gave me all of his riches, I could not go beyond the word of the Lord. I would not be able to do it. The problem is that Balak thinks that Balaam can still do his own will. Balak hears this and he thinks, yeah, but Balaam, you still have a will of your own and you can do your own will. And Balaam says, no, I can't. I can't do good or bad of my own will. That's what he says. I can't do my own will. Even Balaam, a false prophet, teaches us the importance of saying, not my will. You see, Balaam's will is to curse Israel. That is his will. His will is to curse Israel and get rich. That's what he wants. But Balaam says, I can't carry out my own will. The entire battle with sin in this life comes down to one line spoken by Jesus. You can really say that our entire battle with sin in this life comes down to this one single line by Jesus. And here it is. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. I was talking with Lauren a few weeks back, and I was sharing with her that one of the hardest pieces about marriage is that a husband has a will and the wife has a will. And often you can't accomplish both. I mean, not even on spiritual things. I mean, just life. Husband has a will, wife has a will. You often can't accomplish both. The husband wants to eat out or wants to eat at home, The wife wants to eat out. One of those wills has to win out. Unless they're going to do their own thing. The wife wants to have a second child. The husband wants to stop at one. One of those wills has to win out. The husband wants to buy this house. The wife wants to buy that house. One of those wills has to win out. And see, in marriage, you have to decide whose will is going to win out. How are we going to figure this out? And yet when we come to God, this dynamic does not exist. It doesn't exist. It must not exist. It's never, well, God, can we compromise? You know, it's a 50-50, God, right? You get your way 50% of the time. I get my way 50% of the time. Right? It's a give and take, God. You know, sometimes your will, right? No, God's will must win out every single time. Every time. We never know better than Him. We never have a better idea than God. We have never thought through this decision more thoroughly than God has. When it comes to the decisions that we make in our life, we should never say, well, this is what I want, and therefore what's going to happen. We should say, I don't have a will. I have submission to His will. My desires matter. They are not ultimate. I don't have a will. I have submission to His will. Balaam says, what the Lord speaks, that will I speak. Balak, it doesn't matter what I want. I have to say what God says. You know what I find interesting? Is that there is a final oracle. Did you think about that? Why? Because Balak was angry. Balak was angry. Verse 10 says that his anger was kindled against Balaam. He struck his hands together. He told him not only to go home, but he says, flee to your home. Now, I don't know about you, but if I'm a pagan diviner and this king who's got an army behind him tells me, you best flee, I might want to run out of there. Right? This guy might kill me. He is a king. He's got an army behind him. And yet Balaam says to Balak, I don't get to go home. I don't get to go home until the Lord sends me home. Everything that God tells me to speak, that must I speak. Balaam continues to prophesy despite Balak's anger. Think about that. Brothers and sisters, we need not let man's anger glue our mouth shut. You ever told your mom something that made her angry? What do we do? That's the end of that conversation. You ever told your friends something that made them angry? End of that conversation. We need not let the anger of man glue our mouths shut. You ever made someone unrighteously angry with your righteous words? We've all been guilty of making someone righteously angry with our unrighteous words. But you ever made someone unrighteously angry with your righteous words? You see, Balaam shows us that we need not let the anger of man silence us. Remember when Stephen was given his witness in the book of Acts? He spoke the truth to them. He tells them nothing but the truth. And how did the people respond? When they heard these things, they were enraged. They ground their teeth at him. They covered their ears. They yelled at the top of their voices. And they all rushed at him and they stoned him. Brothers and sisters, if you make it your goal to never make man angry, you will actually accomplish two goals. You won't make man angry, and you will make God angry. I would rather man be angry with me than God be angry with me. Look at verse 14. And now behold, I'm going to my people. You kind of wish that was the end. Balak's like, okay, go. That's what I said. Go home. He says, come, I will let you know what this people will do to your people in the latter days. Balaam says, look, I'm going home. But before I go home, before I go to my people, I got one more thing I need to do. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen to your people. I have blessed Israel. Now it's time for me to tell you what's going to happen to your people. I know you didn't pay me for that. It's free of charge. Here's what's going to happen to your people in the latter days. I want you to notice how different this time is. Balak didn't ask for a final prophecy. Balak doesn't ask for this. Balaam doesn't tell him to build 7 altars and offer 7 bulls and 7 rams. Balaam doesn't seek the Lord as before. So why does Balaam give this final prophecy? Why does he give it? This is my conjecture. 2 reasons. Number 1, because the Holy Spirit is still upon him. Remember we looked at it last week? The Spirit of God comes upon Balaam, and I think the Spirit of God is still upon him, still working in his life. It's almost as if the Spirit is saying, I'm not finished with you yet, Balaam. And number 2, it's almost as if God is saying, Balak, this is not going to end on your terms. This will end on my terms. God says, I have one more final prophecy to deliver. Brothers and sisters, don't let the fire of the Spirit be extinguished. Let it burn. Let the fire of the Spirit continue burning. Don't extinguish it. The Spirit of God has rushed upon Balaam, and God is not finished with him yet. The reality is that the Spirit may be working in your life. There are many of you here where the Spirit is actively working in your life. I mean, He's all working in all of our lives, but maybe in a unique way, in a fresh way, in a different way. The Spirit is working in your life. Maybe He's shown you several insights, prophecies, revelations. Maybe He has enabled you to put to death for the first time in your life several besetting sins. Maybe He has spurred you on to step out in faith in a way that you've never stepped out in faith before. And if that's true, I want to exhort you right now, don't let that fire go out. Let the fire continue burning. Let it continue to burn. One of my biggest pet peeves in basketball is when a team is on a run and the coach of the team that is on the run either calls a timeout or puts in subs. I can't stand it. You're down 15 points. You then go on an 18-3 run and you tie it up. And then you make one small mistake and the coach is like, timeout. No! Or you're on a run, timeout, he puts in subs in. No! Let the run continue. We're on a run. We got a good thing going here. Why would you put in subs? Why would you call timeout? Let it continue. And I want to say the same to you, brothers and sisters. If the Spirit is working in your life, let it continue. Don't be satisfied and be like, well, that's good. A lot was accomplished there. Let it continue. Don't quench the Spirit. You know what that word quench there means? Literally extinguish. Don't extinguish the Spirit. Let the fire of the Spirit continue burning in your life. Let God accomplish all that He wants to do in and through you. Sometimes we let the Spirit take us this far. And God says, I'll take you further. I'll take you further. let him take you further. Look at verse 15 to 16. And he took up his discourse and said, the oracle of Balaam the son of Beor, the oracle of the man whose eye is opened, the oracle of him who hears the words of God and knows the knowledge of the Most High, who sees the vision of the Almighty, falling down with his eyes uncovered. Balaam takes up his final discourse now. The opening of this fourth prophecy, it's almost identical to the opening of the third. So I'm not going to rehash most of it. The one change is this addition of the line, and knows the knowledge of the Most High. That piece is added. Knows the knowledge of the Most High. So here it is. Not only had God opened Balaam's eyes to see him, not only had God opened his ears to hear him, God has also opened his mind to know him. And for the second time, Balaam has the same response. Same as the third prophecy, same as the fourth. What does he do? He falls down. He falls down in the presence of God. I want you to see the connection. What does seeing God, hearing God, and knowing God produce? Worship. It produces worship, even if it is a pagan kind of worship that we'll see at the judgment when every knee bows down before the Lord. Our worship of God is directly correlated to how much we see God, know God, and hear God. They're directly correlated. Let me give a very basic analogy. Suppose a 30-year-old shepherd man living in 600 BC lived on a flat plain. I mean, it is just completely flat. Peak elevation, 4 feet. All this man his whole life ever saw, all he ever heard, all he ever knew about was this flat plain. Thought that was all that there was. Thought the whole world was just one giant flat plain. And then suppose one day his sheep is lost. And he goes looking for it. He goes looking for it and looking for it. And he travels farther than he's ever traveled before in his whole life. And he sees something in the distance. He's like, what is that? And as he gets closer, it's a hill. A 200-foot hill. And he just marvels at it. He just sits there and stares at it in wonder. Wow, I didn't know such things existed. What a majestic hill. He's never seen anything but flat plains. And this 200-foot hill looks majestic to him. Now let me ask you a question. What do you think his wonder will be if he sees Mount Everest? You see, if all we see and all we hear and all we know is a 200-foot hill, then our worship will be 200 feet deep. But if we see, if we hear, if we know a 29,000-foot mountain, then our worship will be 29,000 feet deep. The more we see God, the more we hear God, the more we know God, the more we worship God. See, God is the same. You look at one person and you say, why is your worship of him greater than mine? It's not because they see a different God. It's that they see more of God. They hear more of God. They know more of God. That's always how it happens. Your worship of God will always be as deep as your knowledge of Him, and your hearing of Him, and your seeing of Him. No more, no less. Look at verse 17. I see Him, but not now. I behold Him, but not near. A star shall come out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel. It shall crush the forehead of Moab and break down all the sons of Sheth. Balaam says, I see Him, but not now. I behold Him, but not near. What does this mean, and who does this refer to? This either refers to the person in the second half of the verse, the star and the scepter, or it refers to Israel as a people in the latter days. Either is possible. The point is that Balaam sees this prophecy, and he sees it as taking place in the distant future. This is not going to happen anytime soon. This is going to happen in the distant future. And then Balaam gives this beautiful prophecy. He says, a star shall come out of Jacob, a scepter shall rise out of Israel. Now this is Hebrew parallelism, where scepter is paralleling star, and Israel is paralleling Jacob. So they're referring to the same thing. Now, why a star? And why a scepter? And who is this? Well, stars were often used metaphorically to refer to kings. The Babylonian king is called the day star in Isaiah 14:12. So I think this is a king. Who is this future king? This is generally understood as a messianic prophecy. This is King Jesus. We are given a messianic prophecy of our King by a false prophet. Jesus refers to Himself in Revelation 22:16 as the bright morning star. And even a star announced His birth. This is further solidified by the fact that it talks about a scepter. A scepter, what is that? A scepter is a staff, or it's a baton, usually in the hand of a sovereign or a ruler. It's an emblem of authority. Again, giving credence to the fact that this is a king that's coming. Interesting that when Jacob gives his prophecies about his sons, back in Genesis, this is what he said about Judah. He says to Judah, the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet. Now, why is that important? Because Jesus descended from the tribe of Judah. Now, this star and this scepter may have found its partial fulfillment in King David. I do think there's a double fulfillment here. It's partially fulfilled with King David, but it is ultimately fulfilled in King Jesus. Brothers and sisters, Jesus is the light to our darkness, and He is the king to our hell-bound rebellion. You know, we have flashlights now and all kinds of things for light at nighttime, but in those days, stars were vastly important. That's how you navigated. If you're a ship on the seas and you have no idea if you're heading towards land or not, you need the stars. They are the light in your darkness. Jesus is the light to our darkness, and He is the king to our hell-bound rebellion. I'm going to tell a very personal and embarrassing story. When I was in 7th grade, my church took a youth trip to the beach. And we stayed in a hotel room. It was me, my older brother, my older cousin that I worshipped, and a friend. All four of us were in one room. On the first night, I woke up in the middle of the night, and I had to go to the bathroom so bad, but I couldn't find the light switch. The room was so dark. I don't know why it was so dark, but it was so dark. It was a new room, so I was disoriented. I couldn't even find the bathroom door either. So I started to panic. I was frantically running my hands along the walls, trying to find the bathroom door, trying to find a light switch or the bathroom door, and I couldn't find either. Couldn't find the bathroom door, couldn't find the light switch. panic begins to set in. And then after a minute or so, I couldn't hold it anymore, and so I just stood in the middle of that hotel room and peed all over myself. I was so embarrassed. I was so ashamed. I did not want my brother, my older brother, and my older cousin, and my friend to know I'm in 7th grade. I'm not a 7-year-old. I'm in 7th grade. I did not want them to know that I had done this. So I took my clothes off and I hid them. I couldn't even go get a shower because I couldn't find the bathroom. I think about that moment from time to time. The feelings of panic, the feelings of anxiety, the feeling of shame, the feeling of embarrassment, desperately hiding my clothes. I'm wanting, please don't let them find this out. All of which could have been solved if I could have just found the light. Friends, Jesus is the light to our darkness. He is the King to our hell-bound rebellion. You see, we are born on this earth leading a rebellion against God. Satan has convinced us that our nameplate is on this throne. And so what do? We sit down as king, but we have been deceived. We have been deceived by him. I love that scene in Lord of the Rings where Saruman has taken over King Theodred. He's holding the king hostage until Gandalf the White comes in, removes his robe and reveals that he is. And what does he do? He drives Saruman out. It's such a picture of Christ coming into our life and driving out Satan. Jesus is the light to our darkness. He is the King to our hell-bound rebellion. Now, Balaam started this prophecy by saying, "Come, I will let you know what this people will do to your people in the latter days. And here's what he will do. It shall crush the forehead of Moab and break down all the sons of Sheth." In other words, God is going to judge Moab for their sin. What an ironic twist. Talk about irony. Balak hired Balaam to curse Israel so that Moab can defeat them in battle. And instead Balaam says, well, actually, here's what's going to happen in later days. Israel is going to crush Moab's forehead. You see, Balak was so desperate to control the future. Desperate to control it. He went to extraordinary means to control the future. But the future could not be controlled by this king. Why? Because another king has already written the story. The story's already been written. Brothers and sisters, we can sometimes be so desperate to control our future. Right? I mean, isn't that why we're anxious? We want to know how the story turns out. We would do anything to know that this will happen, whatever this is. When God has already written our story, it's already been written. We can be so desperate to plan for the future, to predict the future, to secure the future, to determine the future. Why? Because the future is scary. It is, right? I'm a human like you. The future is scary. These 4 boys, their future terrifies me. We don't like the unknown. We don't like not having control. And yet, despite our best efforts to try to control the future, God holds the future. And we need to realize this. In the summertime, we'll usually get a few spots with ants in our house. We even get them in the church. I find it fascinating to play with ants because an ant will try to go this way, and I'll put my finger up to try to redirect it, and then it just tries to go around my finger. And I put my finger up again, and it just keeps trying, right? And I think to myself, this is futile, ant. Give up. I have limitless resources to block you. I can remove the trash that you so love. I can give you poison to end your life. I have sovereign control over you, ant. Give up. You will not win. Brothers and sisters, God has sovereign control over your life. You might say, yeah, I already know that, Matt, right? It's one thing to know that. It's another to live like it. Give up on trying to dictate your future. Give up. God has already written your prophecy. It's already been written. Stop trying to control it. Look at verse 18 to 24. Edom shall be dispossessed. Seir also, his enemies, shall be dispossessed. Israel is doing valiantly, and one from Jacob shall exercise dominion and destroy the survivors of cities. Then he looked on Amalek and took up his discourse and said, Amalek was the first among the nations, but its end is utter destruction. And he looked on the Kenite and took up his discourse and said, enduring is your dwelling place, and your nest is set in the rock. Nevertheless, Cain shall be burned when Asher takes you away captive. And he took up his discourse and said, alas, who shall live when God does this? But ships shall come from Kittim and shall afflict Asher and Eber, and he too shall come to utter destruction. I find it fascinating that Balaam doesn't stop with Moab, right? I mean, Balak's here for Moab, and then Balaam tells him, here's what's going to happen to Moab. And he says, oh yeah, by the way, before I go, I'm going to give some prophecies on some other nations while I'm here. I might as well. God is going to judge 4 other nations. Let's look at them individually really briefly. Number 1, Edom. Edom is the descendants of Esau. Balaam says that Edom will be dispossessed. Essentially, they will be conquered and possessed by another. Seir is a mountain range in Edom, so they're one and the same. They're not 2 different things. But while all this is happening to Edom, Israel is getting stronger. Israel is growing valiantly. Balaam says that one from Jacob, we don't know who, one from Jacob will exercise dominion and destroy the survivor of the cities. Second group, the Amalekites. He says Amalek was the first among the nations. I don't know if there actually are. That may be meaning that they thought they were the first among the nations, first in supremacy. But its end is utter destruction. If you remember when Israel came up out of Egypt, Amalek came and attacked Israel. And what did the Lord say about Amalek? He said, write this as a memorial in a book and recite it in the ears of Joshua, that I will utterly blot out from memory Amalek from under heaven. The Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. And later God will use Saul to wipe them off the planet. Saul fails to do so, but that will happen in the days of Hezekiah. 3, the Kenite. They are one of the 10 tribes living in Canaan during Abraham's time. He says, enduring is your dwelling place. Your nest is set in a rock. Nevertheless, Cain shall be burned. It was commonly thought that Cain was the father of the Kenites. That's conjecture, but that's what was commonly thought. And he says, God says he'll use Asher to judge them. Now, what is that? Asher is an ancient city dating back to 2500 BC. Asher's going to come in and is going to take the Kenites captive. This will later become the homeland of the Assyrians. But then he says, look, don't think that Asher is going to get off scot-free. Asher's day of judgment will come. 4, Asher. Balaam asked the question, who can live when God does this? He says, ships will come from Kittim. That's an ancient name for the island of Cyprus. This probably refers to the Philistines. He says the Philistines will afflict Asher and Eber. He too will come to utter destruction. Now, why does he give all of these prophecies? I think because Balaam is testifying to Balak, to Moab, to Israel, that one day all of Israel's enemies will be crushed. They will all come to utter destruction. And the same is true for us, brothers and sisters. One day all of our enemies will be destroyed. This star coming out of Jacob will use his scepter and he will crush the forehead of Satan. He will break down all the sons of darkness. Sin will be dispossessed. Our flesh will come to utter destruction. The world will be burned and death will be carried away in chains to an everlasting lake of fire. We know how the story ends. We've been told, it's been prophesied, we know how it ends. Our enemies lose. God wins. And I love how this story ends. Verse 25. I love verse 25. Then Balaam rose and went back to his place. And Balak also went his way. Balaam rose and went back home. Balak also went his way. That's it. The end. I love this ending because of its simplicity. God has spoken. God has decreed. And all Balaam and Balak could do is go home. What are we going to do? I guess we'll go home. Church family, sometimes the best thing we can do is go home. Go home in submission. Sometimes we are fighting God, fighting the will of God, fighting the desires of God, and sometimes the best thing we can do is say, I need to go home. God, you win. Now, tragically, we'll find out later that Balaam doesn't go home. We won't find this out till much later. He doesn't. He actually goes to Midian and becomes a snare to Israel. But he had a window. Right here. Right here, he has a window. He had a chance. He saw God. He heard God. He knew God. And he has this small window where all he needs to do is go home and submit to God. And he doesn't do it. He doesn't do it. Sometimes the godliest thing we can do is go home and submit to God's control over our life. Because He holds the future. Let's pray.